Rock the Ripple. Rock the Ripple. The Rock the Ripple podcast with Narita McInnes.
Let's do this.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Rock the Ripple podcast. I'm your host, Narita McInnes. It is so awesome to be here with you as always. And today is another very exciting day because I am joined by a very special guest. She is a global citizen and survivor of satanic ritual abuse, torture, and trafficking, who went on to do her own healing work and train in trauma and recovery to help other survivors and those trapped in the cycle of violence. She is also the host of the show Unbroken, where she interviews survivors, truth warriors, healers, and teachers alike. There is, of course, so much more to this incredible woman. She is the one and only beautiful inside and out Max Lowen. Max, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. It's truly an honor to be here.
Oh, thanks, Max. It's an honor to share the screen with you as well, too. So I am just so humbled to be here with you today. And I guess, as you would know, being the host of a show as well and everything that you've done, to start off with, who is Max Lowen?
Well, the short answer is a continually evolving spiritual being in a human body. I mean, that's what I would say. I feel like in my lifetime up to now, I've had several lifetimes within it. But yeah, as you alluded to, I grew up in a political family, and so I lived in 5 different countries in my childhood, and grew up trilingual. And so kind of that side of my life, you might say, was privileged, and the private school thing, and skiing in the Andes and the Alps and having chauffeurs to take me to school and that kind of thing. But on the other side, as sometimes happens in these circles, really in all circles, my Italian side of the family was involved in the cult. And so really from birth onwards, I was targeted. I was put through rituals. My Italian uncle ran a facility, was part of running a facility under the ground in Rome, where, I was put through different forms of torture, things like electric shock and having to watch animals and people be tortured and killed, the usual beatings, being locked in freezers, being buried alive with dead bodies, being put in cages, and then also taken to the sublevels of the Vatican. You can only get there through underground tunnels, where I witnessed the elites gathering, the Black Pope, some bishops, some actors and actresses, VIP people of government, corporations would gather, and they had this marble altar and would bring in babies and small children and brutalize them and then sacrifice them, literally cut them open and drink the blood that came out, and it was collected on the sides of the altar. And it was a ritual to Lucifer. The Vatican worships Lucifer, so unfortunately, witnessed that several times, and then was also trafficked out of the Vatican, and mostly, to my memory, in Italy, although a few times in the United States and possibly a few other countries in Europe.
It's such, I think for people who have not heard any of this before, it would just be, obviously you've done years and years of healing and doing your own work to be able to sit here and talk about it how you do. But those experiences, they would have transformed your life and the way you see the world. And the person that I know that you are, that is just such a strong warrior woman of light that stands in her power and her knowing and truth, like that would have been such a journey for you, and to have had to go through that from such a young age. How have you found that journey, and what have you learned the most?
You after healing, you get to keep the gifts, and if you survive that kind of thing, if it doesn't destroy you or kill you, it does build you into a much stronger person. So I get to keep the strength. Um, I like to look at things and reframe things. So I would say, like, one advantage of that childhood is I never trusted authority. I never trusted the government. Everything that happened, I looked at with that skeptical eye. So I wasn't fooled, like so many people have been. I did not assume that the world was a good place. So actually in my journey, I learned that many, many people are very, very good. And that really soothed my heart. I didn't know that at that point. You know, when I came to the States, I studied psychology, undergraduate and a couple of graduate degrees. And I ended up working in trauma. So I worked in jails. I did trauma groups for women in a women's prison, worked at a rape crisis center with children who had been sexually abused. I actually did men's groups for batterers for a while, and other such things. And so there was nobody that I couldn't understand, relate to, or help because of what I had been through, right? And there was something in me, because of all the things I was forced to watch that I was helpless in the face of, being able to help other people recover from whatever it was they had been through that was traumatic was so fulfilling to my soul and so healing. So I just feel like if I went through that kind of stuff, I might as well jujitsu it into something that I can do good with. And then, I had my daughter, and that was a huge part of my getting to know what love really was and seeing what a normal childhood should be like. It really did give me so much. And in the last few years, I sort of found my voice. I was in a sort of angry moment with God or the divine, whatever we call that energy. And I was like, but people need to know the truth. And then I heard, well, then tell them. And I thought, me, I'm a little bit shy. The idea of being, if you had told me 10 years ago, I would be sitting here talking to you, I would have laughed in your face, But I thought, okay, because I've always listened to that voice, And so I told my story. Then, like you said, I started interviewing people. And that is extremely satisfying for me, because I think there's two significant things. We have to know the truth. We have to know the reality of what's being done to children, but also to everyone on the planet, because to some degree, maybe my trauma is on this end of the continuum, but there's this planet, if you incarnate here, there's trauma, right? So you need to know the global cult, what they're doing, how they're mind controlling us, the things they've created, like violence and poverty and all this stuff. You have to understand the truth. And then, we have to know how to heal ourselves and recover and restore ourselves so we can step into our actually true power and potential, which is greater than their power. We are much more than them. So with Unbroken, I felt like, okay, I'm going to do these two things. I'm going to put out the truth, and I'm going to put out tools. And, that's why I interview other healers, and I'm a healer myself, about how can we journey back to ourselves? Because I think that formula is a winning formula for changing the situation we're in right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. So with what it is that you do, how are you helping people? Because I know you've done psychology, and you've also, there's so much that you have done, and then all these gifts you're able to share, and sort of, I guess you would probably know from the outset, as soon as you see someone, you can pick up on their frequency and where they're at. And I think that's probably a gift that you've gleaned as well.
Yes. There's many ways to help people. Sometimes we don't even think about it, but if I'm out at the grocery store, I will make eye contact with the clerk at the store, the cashier, and have a little conversation. Or, if there's someone that's homeless, I will buy them some food, or, whatever it is, just small things like that. I think just recognizing people, connecting with them with your heart. The world that's been created for us, we're so separate and isolated, right? So I think you can start even at that basic level of just every person I see, we're these beautiful beings. And I can see that in people, not all people, of course. I can see the ones that are demonic as well. And it's like, stay away. But, we can just be connected with each other, with animals, with nature. I do help people in counseling or coaching or whatever you want to call it. So there's people that I work with directly. I think through my interviews, I've been told, and so my hope is that I wake people up, I help people understand things. We learn through stories. So, when people tell their stories or I tell my story, people connect, and then they can see where maybe they can take some steps towards putting their own selves back together. I am planning on creating a class that can help specifically SRA survivors with some different understanding of what we go through and tools. I'm in the process of creating a training for trauma that people like teachers and anyone in healthcare or, real healthcare. And in my education, they don't teach you very much about trauma, and no one knows anything about SRA, but yet people are coming out of the woodwork. And so I think there's things that people need to understand and learn. And the little bit of trauma that I see, trainings that I see out there, a lot of them do not, or most of them do not include the social, political, like the background, the history. This doesn't occur in a vacuum, right? So yeah, in all these ways, I'm just, and I think for all of us, when we've done our work, when we're whole, or, continuously really working on that, but we're like a light bulb that turns on, and that light that you are, that I am, just existing, it makes a difference. Our frequency makes a difference to those around us. So I try to live my best life every day. I try to, I get into bad moods or whatnot, but I try and really maintain, a high frequency and just, yeah. So I think it's a broad thing. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And I think when that training is available, please, let me know. I think that I'll spread the word as much as I can, because I think that is so important. And you talked about stories as well. And I think you're so right. People sharing their stories, so people can connect. What is a story that you would love to share right now?
About my life, or
like, as I guess, I'll just put you on the spot. What is the story? But then, I mean, you've got so many, but when you said that, I was just like, yeah, it's so true, because people then put themselves in your story and see how that they would be or what they would do, and for someone like yourself who's been through so much and come out the other side, just this awesome human whose light is shining brighter than ever, and connecting with people who are doing the same. Like, what are some stories maybe that I guess have shifted your perception of the world even, and got you, that has affected you in a positive way, or whatever it might be?
I would say, it's not, I mean, I'm where I am today, but it wasn't always easy. I struggled so much. I could never sleep. So I ended up having to, take things to help me sleep, because my nervous system was so out of whack from all the trauma that I could never relax enough to sleep. And I both wanted to be with people and, kind of have that. And I was terrified of it at the same time. So there was this back and forth. And because of all the things that had, all the psychological torture and the programming, I felt pretty worthless. I felt, I was afraid that I was told originally by my mother that when people would get to know me, they would hate me, So you believe these things when you're a child. So I had a lot of things to overcome, and this inner constant gnawing. I liken it to that old Pac-Man game where the little mouths are always, it was like inside of me, these little mouths were always eating at me. It was just the sense of torment that I lived with. But yet I was so strong that I was kind of able to, you couldn't tell from the outside. I seemed, pretty normal when I was in university and later working. So it was a process, right? And I would overcome things little by little. And for example, just in the last couple of years, I used to, whenever I would travel and I would stay in a hotel or an Airbnb or something, I wouldn't sleep for the first night. I would panic all night because it would bring up the memories of being trafficked. And strangely enough, that one of the worst things about that was that I didn't know where I was. I was in a strange place. I didn't know what these people were going to do to me. I mean, I did, but it was that feeling of never knowing when I was going to go home, and so that panic was with me every time I traveled. And just about 2 years ago, so recently, I had traveled somewhere and boom, it didn't happen. And I recently traveled to Mexico. I was telling you earlier, to speak at a conference, and I stayed in various places, and I just slept like normal. I mean, it's a miracle to me, so I get really excited when I overcome things like that. And, with my daughter, when I had her, of course, I was terrified that somebody would take her, that somebody would kill her, that something would happen to her. And so I lived with that anxiety too, but I worked on that. And, there came a point a few years ago that she traveled to Europe with a bunch of her girlfriends, and I'm in the United States, so she was across the ocean, and I handled it, it didn't, so I can see the progress in all the things that I, have gone through. So that's a story that I'll tell, that it's not, to put yourself back together, to heal yourself, it's not easy, but I had to honor that, with what I've been through. I mean, of course, I was going to be that way. Of course, those things were going to be hard for me, right? And so I learned little by little by little and overcame. And so instead of thinking of the things that, perturbed me or tormented me, I like to focus on the overcoming that I've done, and I always want to reframe things, right? So when things happen, there's an element, I think, of trusting our higher self, trusting that guidance and that voice, and trying to look and go, because many times I've said, I want to overcome all the negative subconscious programming in me, and you have this idea like suddenly, you'll be free of it. No.
Oh, yeah.
The way that it heals is it starts to, like, you have to go through the things to pull them out. Yeah. So they activate. So the memories come up, and that sucks. It doesn't feel good at all. Right? So, but yet the reward is freedom, inner freedom. And if you have inner freedom, you have outer freedom, and it's because really the way that we live, none of us are in a cage. The cage is in here. It's in our mind, right? I mean, we've been raised in a culture, right? So that's put us in. So, but we can get out of that. We can get out of anything. And so that's the story I would like to tell, that any one of us can overcome everything that we've been through And there's something, I think it's worth slogging through it to get to a point where we can be free and actually feel the joy. Like, this planet is so beautiful. You know, I've seen a lot of it, and I'm going to come to Australia, like I told you, and see more of it. But my God, you know, when the sun is out and you hear the birds and, you know, you can be in the ocean, like there's so much beauty and goodness. And I couldn't feel that for a long time. You know, I remember once looking out my window at home and going, it's so pretty out there. There's trees, there's mountains, but why am I feeling this internal anxiety? And that's when I decided, you know, I'm not free. Like, I can't really enjoy because of all this torment. And so, although it's been a long and sometimes very arduous process of healing, I'm in such a different place now, and I can feel that joy. And I think that's worth it.
Oh, it's so worth it. It's so worth it. I couldn't agree more. We do have a beautiful planet. And yes, there are some shithouse things. Absolutely. Absolutely. But I mean, to be able to enjoy it and just hear the birds sing. And I smiled when you talked about the grocery store before, because that's something I always say to people, you know, your frequency. But I think people will relate as well to what you're saying about the Pac-Man, the voices in our heads, and um, that for some of us can really be a big ship to turn around. I often talk about that. No matter what your level of trauma is, the voices and the things that you're saying to yourself or whatever is talking to you, when we can shift that and consciously decide, like, no, I'm not going to do this anymore, then that's when we can really step fully into our power. And like you said, it won't always be easy. Stuff will come up when you do that, because you need to shift through it. You need to shed the layers, don't you?
Yeah, it's kind of like people talk a lot nowadays about ascension, right?
Mm,
And they think, first of all, it's not a location, it's an inner thing,
mm,
right? But how do you get to a higher level of consciousness within yourself? It's actually by peeling off all the things that are blocking you, all the traumas, all the distorted subconscious beliefs. That's the process. So if you want to ascend, you better get ready to do some internal work, you know, shadow work, whatever you want to call it. That's the path. That's what it looks like. That's what we have to do. But it's well worth it. And you know, you talked about thoughts, and that's something I noticed in my own journey, that, see, the brain is wired in a certain way, and we have a survival part back here. And it exists in case there's some actual danger in front of us. You know, if there's a tiger in front of me, thinking what I'm going to do takes too many seconds, it's too costly. So the prefrontal cortex shuts down. You can't think, you can't reason, and you just react, fight or flight. You know, you run, you fight. There's some survival mechanism that's activated. The problem is the brain doesn't know the difference between something real out here, a scream, which is why when you watch a movie of something scary, you'll scream, right?
mm,
Or your own thoughts. So at some point, I recognized that I was keeping myself in a state by my own thoughts. The thoughts in our head will trigger a cascade of, you know, hormones and neurotransmitters and activate parts of the brain. So we really actually have to be careful about our own thoughts. And I tell people, don't believe everything you think, because our thinking gets messed up. And of course, you know, and I know that, I won't mention names because this will be on YouTube, but that complex, you know, has created all communications technology.
mm,
And there are patents a mile long for mind control, that thoughts can actually be inserted into our heads, right? So you definitely have to be very wary of your own thinking. And a clue is if your thinking is taking you down or making you stressed out or putting you in a negative relational state with other people, well, then go look at that. You know, wait a minute, is this right? You know, could there be a different thought? So I'm glad that you mentioned that, because I think that to monitor, it's like you have to have a little you here watching what you're thinking. at all times. It's super important, and it can really transform our lives.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, that's the work that I do is help people reprogram their subconscious mind because of the very fact that when we're talking to ourselves, like we might not even realize what we're saying. Like we think it's us. We think it's us, but it's actually just all these patterns and programs that we've developed from a young age, when we're in the womb, all of that sort of stuff. And if we want to shift consciousness and see humanity thrive, we ourselves must do that. So, how do we do that? We begin within and we do the work on ourselves. And, like you said, I love what you said, like this little you that watches your thoughts. Is that even mine? What's going on here? Like, and really notice it. And I guess that also helps us to become more self aware, doesn't it? And more aware of who we are. Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's so many ways that our thoughts actually influence our state, in the sense, like I love to, I read this book by Emoto. I have the book where he, the guy who he put either certain kinds of music or words like love or hate on water, and then he would freeze it and look at the crystals, and you can see it right there.
Mm.
The crystals with love or harmony or whatever are beautiful, and the ones with negativity are deformed.
Mm.
Well, we're made of mostly water. The planet is made of mostly water. Like, my God, if I think a negative thought about myself, like even something simple, like, we kind of say it like, oh my God, that I'm so stupid. It's like, don't say that, because it's creating, and then DNA, with studies that I've read, responds. It's like a language. It's like a music. So what you say influences your DNA, and our cells are listening to us at all times, right? So what are we doing when we negatively self-talk? But even if I say something negative about somebody else, it's, I think we're all one consciousness that split itself into all of us and every blade of grass and tree, and, to know itself. So if I say something negative to you, it's going to affect me too, right? And my body, it's going to affect my body. So it's just a way to say, like, it's so significant. Even every little thing that we say, it's a frequency, goes out into the universe, into the field, and it impacts everything. So, I mean, when you think about it that way, it's like, it's a little scary, but wow, what a responsibility it is to monitor our thoughts and our speech, right?
Absolutely. And I love that you brought up water too. I think I don't know, I saw it somewhere, but an old wives' tale or whatever, never drink water when you're angry, because you're drinking that water and then you're putting it in there. So when you're drinking your water, think positive thoughts, think how fabulous you are, think how amazing things are, and sort of say that to yourself, because you're programming your body and your frequency when you do that. And that's like the simplest little things, but they're actually so powerful, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I take a shower, I try to remember every time to, I thank the water and I say, thank you for cleansing me and healing me. And I throw in rejuvenating me, because that would be nice. And
I'm gonna throw
nurturing
that
me,
in.
or if I'm about to drink water and I remember, I say, I love you, water, because now I'm infusing it right there with that energy. So it's every tiny little thing that we do that adds up and that matters.
Mm. And you, speaking of healing, and I love that. I'm gonna definitely add that to my shower routine. But with when I've listened to you speak in different interviews and around the place, something that you've said around healing is that you're someone, and perhaps because of what you've gone through, but you never get sick and you heal so quickly. Like that's just phenomenal. Did you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. I think that it's probably an ability that I came in with. It's interesting because I just had that interview with Vali, and she was saying that she was genetically made and implanted into a woman, and that they tinkered and gave her body an ability to self-heal. That's new information to me. So I'm thinking about that. But so I don't know if that was done to me too, because I was also part of the Jesuit thing. But either way, I was able to, whatever they would do, my body would heal itself within a short amount of time. I that ability has, I don't know how I did it as a child, it just happened. But then as an adult, after I remembered some of those memories, I noticed my body still does that. You know, when I was giving birth to my daughter, I had to have a cesarean, and that's a whole nother story, but because they took babies out of me, so my body was not going to let her out. And you know, it's a abdominal surgery and everything. And a week later, I pulled out my own stitches, and because I was fine, it was
Wow.
healed. I know that's a little crazy. I did that when I was 19 or 20. I broke my elbow. So I had this cast like from here all the way up. And I was in Italy at the time. And in August in Italy, everyone goes on vacation. So it was supposed to come off, but they told me I had to wait another 2 or 3 weeks. So, you know, with someone's help, I sawed it off myself.
As you do.
And my arm was fine, you know, and a few, maybe, I don't know, 8 or 10 years ago, I had this, they call it a lipoma. I noticed something protruding behind the shoulder, and it turned out to be a tumor about this big. It was benign, but they had to do a pretty complicated surgery under my shoulder blade to remove it. And the surgeon said, you know, gave me pain pills and sent me home and said, like, in a few days, try and walk a little, and then, you know, blah, blah. I threw away the pain pills, and the next morning I went on an hour hike in the woods. And when I went for the first follow-up, I could see her face. She was in complete shock, and she was like, but, you know, she was like, but I don't understand how, but it's completely healed, and you don't need to come back for the next 2 appointments. So also, I never get sick. I don't get colds. I don't get flus. I mean, so something is going on there, right? Something is definitely going on. And it has, I did a reading with someone once, and actually, you interviewed her, Georgina.
Oh,
And when she did my numerology, she said, I never had anyone tell it to me like this. She said, in that reading, she said, you came in with this physical healing ability because you needed it to survive. And I was shocked that she had read that in my chart, right? But there it was. So I do want to say, I think that we all inherently have this. If you look at nature, there's no, or oops, sorry, I said that word. There's no pills, there's no, you know, if a forest is destroyed and then you go back 6 months or a year later, it's regrown. You know, animals get injured and they rest and they recover, and like we all are self-healing, right? So I just think we've been conditioned to believe that, you know, and then all of the models that we're taught about boogeyman things coming in and making us sick and all that is a crock anyway. It's not true. So I think we all have that ability, but it's just not really online, because again, what you believe is extremely powerful. So if you believe that you need some external figure to cure you and to give you this thing that makes your whatever go away, then that's the way it's going to be. I mean, why does what about the placebo effect? They give people a thing, and then they give them a placebo, and that group equally gets better because they believe it, right? So the mind is way more powerful, and the body together. So I do think we all have that, but yes, I've definitely been blessed with some kind of self-healing ability, but also just physical vigor. You know, I mean, I do kickboxing still. I'm very active. So there's definitely something, and it's helped me. You know, I probably wouldn't be here without that.
Yeah, that's so fascinating and amazing that Georgina picked that up as well in your chart as well. It's just, and I'm with you. I totally believe we can all heal ourselves, and nature is our biggest teacher. I mean, like you said, you go out to nature, it goes through a bit of shit, but then it grows back and it flourishes. And you're right. Again, if we hand over our power to someone else for our own healing or our own whatever it might be, then that's how it has to be. But if we know, no, actually I can do this, that's the shit that really is important. That's why we are so powerful. And it's so
Yeah.
simple, yet it's so hard at the same time because of all the conditioning, isn't it?
Yeah. And, when I help people, in terms of counseling, I'm not doing anything. I'm a guide. I'm a support. I'm helping them activate the healing in themselves.
Mm.
And, so this idea that somebody can cure you is ridiculous. I actually, when I was in therapy a long time ago, I did this 10-year therapy process. I once asked my therapist, I said, well, when will I be cured? And she said, honey, only hams can be cured.
Oh, that's awesome.
So, yeah, so it's a big, it's all, of course, we know completely everything in reality is inverted. Literally everything we've been taught in history, through the miseducational system, the medical system, the media. It's all, I mean, there's some truths, but it's all distorted and inverted, really to keep us devolved and in low consciousness and controllable and manipulatable. But again, a lot of effort has been made to sicken us with bad air and water and food and, frequencies and cell towers and, all this repetition of lies. And I mean, my God, it's kind of astonishing when you look at it. We must be really, really powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. As you were saying that, I just felt that so deeply. Like, and I always say it too, how powerful must we be with all this shit that's going on to still be, doing what we're doing? Like, imagine when all of us or enough of us let go of those shackles, undo the onion and the layers of limiting beliefs and all that sort of stuff. I mean, it's game over, isn't it?
It is. I
Mm.
mean, these people have succeeded with secrecy and deception. And the secrecy factor is fast evaporating because of people like yourself and me and so many others. I mean, yeah, the truth is coming out more and more. And so that's it. When they're exposed, and the big secret is, by universal law, to do all the nefarious things they've done, they have to have our consent. But not saying no is implied consent, okay? And participating in their system is consent. So the minute, that's the other big secret, the minute we say no and we stop complying and consenting and participating in their crap, that's it.
Mm.
That's game over too.
Mm. Yeah, well, and because people will sometimes say, well, what can I do? I'm like, energetically, even just saying no is massive because
Yes.
we're energetic beings. So, and you're right as well, like we're participating by not saying anything and just going along with it. And, it's such a nuanced thing, isn't it? Because that things are put out there and, something might be told in a movie and people will think, well, that's just a fiction story, when really in essence it's absolute truth. I mean, there's so many movies where we're being shown what's going on,
Yeah.
and then with people will think, well, that's not true, but I mean, really, it's right there. The whole thing is a show and we're watching a show and all that
Yes.
sort of stuff.
Yes. Yeah. No, movies are disclosure for
Mm.
them. They put it all out there, but knowing that the way it's set up, we will think it's fantasy.
Mm.
Oh no, it's full disclosure. And again, it's hard to change. It's hard to grow and to make something different. It's easy to sit there and be a victim and complain about it, but that doesn't do any good. That doesn't change anything. So just as an example, I'm sure you're aware, I'm horrified to see that in the present moment, what I always knew as a child, because I would hear these people and their plans, they always had a goal to normalize pedophilia, okay? And I see it happening today. The UN, the UNICEF, UNESCO, sorry, guidance that was put out for schools. I don't know what it's like in Australia, but here in the US, they're saying that they have to teach children by age 6 about masturbation, about anal and oral sex. By like 9, they should have access to online pornography. By 9 to 12, they should have engaged in sexual relationships. Like, it's disgusting, right? So there's something that's happening in many public schools in the US today. The books in the school, the books in the library, the curriculum, and many parents, bless their heart, are going to these school board meetings, and like this one mother, and she's showing the pages of the book and reading it, and it comes up on a screen in this meeting. They made her stop talking because it was inappropriate for her to read what the kids are reading in that book. Like, they were like, you can't say that. She's like, it's in the book for kids, but you're telling me I can't say it as an adult in a meeting? So this is happening, right? So here's where it's uncomfortable. It's easy. You send your kids to school. It's kind of like babysitting. People have to work. They have their lives. And it's like, as a parent, you're like, oh, I know this stuff is happening, but what can I do? Well, it's a little bit hard, but what you can do is refuse to send your child to these public schools that are doing this, because this is itself sexual abuse. It's not that different what they're doing to the child's mind and grooming them to accept pedophilia as it would be if you're sending your child to school and they're getting raped in the classroom. Like, would you allow that? Well, this is just a shade different, but still in the same thing. So the hard choice is pull your child out of these schools. Do not send them this material that they're being taught. And then, not to mention, I can be a boy and 5 minutes later a girl, and 5 minutes later neither, and 5 minutes after that both. It's not good for the child's brain, and it's damaging them irrevocably. Don't send your child to school knowing that's happening. And that's hard, because now you have to figure something else out. Research has shown that homeschooled children are way more intelligent and ahead of school children that go to schools. You can homeschool. I know that's an extra effort, but you can also get together with other parents and hire maybe some teachers don't want to teach that filth. And so collect your money, pay a teacher, have little school co-ops, like rotate whose house the kids go to. There's a million creative ideas that we can do. There's actually lots of alternative options now out there to look into. That would be something that people can do, but it's hard because you have to do some extra steps. But if you pull your children out of those schools, and you don't allow them to be sexually abused with this insane material, then you're not only protecting your kids, but here in the US, public schools go on funding, and funding is based on every student that's enrolled. It's withdrawing your participation from that satanic system and saying, no, I do not consent to my child being told this. Well, that's how you might actually change the school system. If nobody's going there, create better school systems or pressure them to withdraw that from the system. So does that make sense? Like, it's not easy, but we have to I firmly believe we have to live morally. We have to do the right thing. These people that run the world do the wrong thing. We have to live with morality and integrity. That itself, the fact that we don't, is what's contributing to them succeeding, right?
Yeah, totally. And I'm so glad you brought that up. I think if you are a parent and you're sending your child to school and this is happening, like, it's a no-brainer. Like, you've had a child for a reason, and you would love them. Like, it would, turn it into one of those come hell or high water moments, and just like, I'm not putting up with this shit. I'm not consenting to this. I mean, it is abuse, exactly what you said. And it isn't easy, like you said. It will be harder because you have to work out something different to do. But what is better? What is morally right? And your children, they are the future, and they need to be looked after like nothing else. And like, if we don't want to be 50 years down the track going, oh, if only we'd done that, the whole world wouldn't be in such, like I see the world stepping into the most beautiful thing, but we do have to make these changes, don't we?
Yeah, we do,
Yeah.
and they're trying to collapse the global food supply chains, and with all the killing of the cattle and the farming creates global warming and all this stuff, which is again complete backwards lie. What in some sense there's something happening there, right? Like I look at it like, okay, well, eating corporate food is terrible for us. Eating processed food or fast food or non-food that's labeled as food, this is what's keeping us sick and then making us have to go get help and whatever. So maybe we don't participate in that system anymore. It's pretty, I'm no expert, but I know people who are, and you can grow plenty of food in a balcony, in a few pots, in a plot in your garden. You can get together. Where I live, they actually have a community garden where people go. There's a farmer's market. There's ranches that I have begun to buy directly from the farms and directly from the ranches, because I'm very protective of what I put in my body, because I know everything's poisoned. So in a sense, we can exit that system too, can't we?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So what if we start to exit all their systems? We can definitely exit the medical system. I hope I can say that word. And go back to what used to work, before Rockefeller created this deliberately. Did you ever read, I think it's called The Secret Covenant? I hope I'm right in the title, but that was written by him about how this medical system was going to slowly poison us and weaken us and kill us, and that this would be not only that they would profit from it, but it would do what they want. And again, people who go in and become doctors, these are good people. They want to do the right thing. They just don't know that this has been set up in a way that, to harm. But what if we start to exit that system? What if we start to learn from people? I met a wonderful woman in the conference I went to in Mexico, in Acapulco, Marjorie Wildcraft, and she grows herbs, and you can make medicine from food, right? You can make all kinds of things for your health. There's a lot of information out there, and plus if you eat right and you exercise, you won't need a lot of extra healthcare anyway. But what if we exit that system and start to use these home remedies? They call them old wives' tales, but actually they were real healing modalities, like I had a woman I knew from Mexico who said when she got the flu, she would take a red onion, chop it up, take some garlic cloves, and the peel of an orange, put water in a pot, boil that, and drink that as a tea for the flu.
Yeah.
Yeah. That is much preferable to taking some medicine that you don't even know what side effects it has, right? So I do think we can exit the system. That's what I'm saying. We don't have to participate in the harmful components around us.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And again, it's coming back to nature, isn't it? Because nature, I don't think we would have been put here without being able to heal ourselves and have those things that we're able to use, and you're talking about the Rockefeller thing too. I don't think I've read the whole thing, but I've seen excerpts, the word, of what was written. And really, again, it comes back to how powerful we are and how our relationship with nature as well. Like when we're in tune with ourselves and in tune with nature, we know what to do. And we can't all be experts in everything, of course. So, we develop relationships with people at our community garden or the farmers market. So what would I do if this is happening? Another one I know of is to put the onion in your feet and your socks overnight. I don't think it smells very great, but that can also pull out the toxins through your body too, if you're having a bit of a flu or something like that. So there's just so much that we can do. And I love that you said that. Yeah, so from here, I could actually talk to you all day, Max, but you might need a wee and do those things. I always say that. What is something that is on your heart right now that you would love to share in this conversation? What's something that's bubbling or brewing away that you would really love to talk about? Yeah, if there's anything else there, yeah.
I think it's love. If you've ever seen David Hawkins' map of consciousness, he lays it out very nicely.
Yeah.
And he has, shame and guilt and fear and anger. There's survival emotions. They're a bandwidth, right? And then there's courage, and then you go higher and higher and higher, and then at the top you get to joy, peace, and love. And the cult wants to keep us in that low frequency bandwidth because that's their frequency, and they're parasites. So see, here's the trick. They need us, we don't need them. They're parasites, and even on an etheric level, if they keep our emotions there, they feed off it, right? It's called loosh. But they feed off us literally. Unfortunately, I've seen it, in flesh. They steal our income, part of our income. They basically, they don't have an energy source to their higher self or the creator. They have chosen to sever that to worship the dark. So they need us, like Morpheus told Neo in the Matrix, like, we're batteries. Yes, we are, right? So, but we're only batteries if we're in that bandwidth of survival frequency. And they know psychology, and they know the nervous system, and they pump fear at us in every form to keep us in that frequency, right? So I say love is the answer. It's okay if you get in that, in one of those emotions, but know that that's a frequency that's keeping you trapped and feeding the parasites, right? So let the emotions, I think if you feel something, you kind of have to feel it and release it to heal it. That idea that, time heals all wounds is not true. You can't bottle it up. You can't dissociate it and put it away. It might help you survive for a while, but eventually this is going to drive you subconsciously if it's there. So we need to feel and let go of all those things, and then get yourself back into a higher frequency. Okay. And it's really not that hard. Somebody showed me this thing. There's a thing called laughter yoga, believe it or not.
Yeah.
And
I've got a
they
friend
like,
who does it.
you
Yeah.
fake a laugh. You've heard of it?
Yeah.
So you fake a laugh and you start laughing, but then once you start laughing, it makes you actually start laughing, right? And laughter, it raises your frequency just like that. If you go out in nature and just take a walk, you go from beta to alpha right away. So your frequency goes up. If you have pets, play with them, pet them. You can even go on the internet, and the best thing is Google babies laughing.
Yeah.
And there's videos of babies laughing, and you cannot not laugh when a baby laughs, right? So feel your feelings. If you're down, let them go, and then put yourself back into a higher frequency. And we're encouraged to live from our brain, our mind, but what if we begin to live, like I put my hand on my heart, and then I try and remember to breathe in and out of my heart and focus my attention there. And we should live from our hearts. It's the first thing that develops in a fetus. It has a bigger field around us, electromagnetic field, than the brain. The brain should work with the heart, but the heart should be the lead, right? So if you can put yourself in a love frequency and try and live from your heart as much as possible, and that'll change us, and then it'll change the people around us, and then it'll change the world. So you don't have to wait for something in your life to be a certain way to feel joy or love. It's the opposite. If you feel the joy and love, you will manifest the same, like attracts like. You will actually bring more of that into your field, and then it's a self-fulfilling thing. So the parasites, the global cult, they will evaporate when there's enough love and light here, right? So I would say practice love. Practice love.
Mm. Oh, I love that so much. You just speaking my language, Max. It's just everything you said there. I couldn't agree more. And with the David Hawkins scale of consciousness, the different frequencies, the point where we sort of cross over from the lower frequencies to the high frequencies is that level of courage. So that's where we do need to take those steps. And when we do that, I mean, the world's our oyster, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. Somebody I know told me that fear is false evidence appearing real.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that too. Max, just thank you so bloody much for coming on the show today. It has been such an honor to chat with you. How can people find you and where can they tap into your amazing show as well?
So my website is unbroken.global. And if people want, there's some membership options if people want to support me and my work, because I put interviews out for free. If you become a member, I do a monthly Zoom with people. And the community's growing. I love doing those Zooms. We support each other. We come up with ideas. It's forming a collective that's aware and conscious and wants to change the world. So you can come to my website. There's also, I did a summit in December, and that's available to buy if you want. It's after the fact, but people like Rachel Vaughn and Doug McIntyre and Kathy O'Brien, Annika Lucas, Jeanette Archer, and all kinds of wonderful consciousness warriors like Penny Kelly and Dale Holmes spoke about AI. There's brilliant people that came together and did some nice presentations. So people kind of want to take a look at that. That's also on the website. And if you want to email me, my email is max@unbroken.global. And I always answer everyone. I like connecting with people. Sometimes there's a lot of emails that might take me a minute to get back to people, but I always do. And my show is also on Bitchute, Rumble, and Brighteon. And I have a presence on Instagram. And I'm going to actually be starting a Substack. I have a lot of I like to write. So I have articles on my website, but I'm going to start a Substack so they're like easier to find as well. So yeah, so that's where you can find me.
Oh, that is awesome. And I will link everything that you've just mentioned in the description and show notes so people can link through and just click through to anything that you've just shared. So thank you again, Max. I also want to thank you at home who has tuned in today to this incredible episode. I hope you have got so much out of it and have loved it as much as I have. And I hope Max has as well too. As always, subscribe, leave a review if you're listening on to wherever you listen to podcasts, give it a like, all those sort of things, leave a comment. Always love hearing from you. But again, Max, just thank you so much for being on the show and for being here today.
Thank you for having me. It was fun and an honor.
Thanks, Max.